Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of The Coal Scene. I'm Chris Hamilton, and I'll be your host for this afternoon's program. I am joined here in the studio by Mark Muco, who is with the West Virginia Tax and Revenue Department, and he serves as deputy secretary, and he's been in that capacity for some time and has been fixing the state's budget for even a longer period of time. After Mark and I chat about the current revenues and projections, we'll be joined by Bill Rainey, president of the West Virginia Coal Association, who will give us a little glimpse of what to expect here in 2013 with respect to coal production, coal employment. Mark, thanks so much for taking time to come by. I know it's a real busy time as you're putting that final crunch on state numbers, but thanks so much for taking time to come by here today.
You're welcome.
I know you've had a couple busy weeks. Not to say all your weeks aren't busy, but I know you were requested to attend a couple of legislative meetings to provide a general overview of state revenues and coal severance taxes, and in light of the cutbacks and the layoffs that we've experienced here as a state. And I know you also attended and spoke at the governor's energy summit last week. So just again, we appreciate you taking time to come by, and our thoughts were that maybe for our viewing audience, you share some of those same numbers that were part of your presentation for the legislature and the governor's energy conference. So maybe a good place to start is, where are we and how does it compare to last year, and what did the severance collections look like?
Last year was a record year for severance taxes in West Virginia. We collected $460 million in regular coal severance tax. We collected another $71.2 million in workers' compensation coal severance taxes. And overall, when you include natural gas and oil and everything else, total state and local severance taxes were pretty close to $660 million, which is an all-time record. And that helped propel our budget. We were in balance last year. In fact, we had a surplus of close to $100 million at the end of the year. This year, after 5 months, the good news is we're running about $2 million above the official estimates. But compared to last year, overall, state collections are down about 0.5%. So we're lower collections this year versus last year. And on the severance side, severance tax collections are off by over 20%. And that's due to a decline in coal production. According to the Energy Information Administration, production in West Virginia is down by more than 7% compared to last year. And not only is production for coal down, but we also are seeing significantly lower natural gas prices. And even though natural gas production is at an all-time high, with the significantly lower natural gas prices, natural gas severance tax collections are also about 25–30% lower than last year.
So overall, severance tax collections are down about 20%.
A little over 20% for the year.
A little over 20%
to date.
And severance tax is based on the sale price of the commodity.
That's correct. It's a 5% severance tax on coal and a 5% severance tax on natural gas and oil. Natural gas and coal are down. Oil is up a bit, but oil is generally less than $10 million a year in revenue, so it's a very small piece of the pie.
What does that, 20 being down 20%, what does that translate into in terms of dollars?
In terms of dollars, for the first 5 months of the year, it's in excess of a $40 million reduction.
And that's first
5 months.
5 months of the year.
July through November.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
We're
fiscal year.
Fiscal year. We're projecting over the entire year a decrease of somewhere around 15%, and that would be in order of magnitude of on the General Revenue Fund of around $60 million
for the year.
For the year.
For the year. I know in coal it appears that there's a being hit on both sides. As you say, we're down in production, but that price has fallen substantially as well.
We've seen some decline in price on coal, not nearly like natural gas, but overall, even though coal production is down 7%, Overall sales activities are down a little over 20%. So that's a combination of the price as well as production.
When you begin to forecast lower revenues as you are and as you have been, then you have revised estimates, revised spending schedules, and budgets are revised. How's all that? How's all that?
Well,
sequence?
In the budget, we for a few years now have forecasted some tough times for severance. It was just a matter of timing as to when that occurred. Fortunately, the export markets have been very strong, and that actually boosted severance tax activity in the last couple of years. But we have been forecasting a bit of a drop-off in coal production over time, some offsetting increases in natural gas. But overall, because of that, we projected a pretty huge budgetary shortfall for fiscal year 14, which is next year. And state agencies have been asked to reduce their spending requests for next year by 7.5% as a result.
Okay, so hopefully that balances.
And
itself out.
that'll help to balance the equation.
I knew that severance tax, particularly from coal, were up substantially the last couple of years. I had no idea that they were near $500 million or the high $400 million.
We had a significant increase from about 2004 through last year, period of about 8 years. Total receipts in severance jumped by over $250 million. About $250 million neighborhood, and that allowed us to basically phase out our sales tax on groceries.
Export looks good, as we were discussing, not only for metallurgical coal for steel production, but also steam coal, thermal coal. Those estimates are, well, the actual experience is very high today.
We're seeing a significant demand for steam coal around the world, especially following the tsunami in Japan and some concerns over the reliability of nuclear around the world. And we're seeing steam coal exports almost double from last year, with significant increases in both Asia and Europe.
It's amazing when you look at the overall projections for that part of the world. And China and India, the more they consume, the more power they consume, the more they grow and develop, and the higher their energy demands are as well. And there's some numbers I was looking at. They may very well double their import of coal here over the next couple of years, both thermal and metallurgical.
And that'll be key for West Virginia. I think this state's going to rely more and more heavily upon the international market for coal in the future, because the domestic steam coal market is in decline right now.
No question about that. And so it's important for the state of West Virginia to pay attention to some of the policy issues with respect to the export market and the expansion of these ports, so that a greater volume of coal could leave the United States. And a lot of that has to do with our how centralized we are. I believe we account for about 50% of all the coal that's exported from the United States. So when you think of it in those terms, 1 out of every 2 tons of coal that leaves the United States comes from West Virginia. That is our future market.
I think West Virginia, location-wise, has had greater access to the ports than some other places. Wyoming is much more difficult to get coal to port right now. So the location has had a lot to do with our success as well.
No question about that. Plus the met coal, we all know that we have some of the finest, highest quality metallurgical coal found anywhere in the world right here in southern West Virginia, and that coal has carried a very high premium around the world the last few years.
We've seen metallurgical coal prices well in excess of $150 a ton in recent years. Now it's starting to scale back a little bit because demand's soft, but still a pretty good premium on met coal.
As the budget, as the overall collections begin to diminish, as they are, budgets have to be revised. Belts have to be tightened, and I suspect that has a domino effect down to the counties, down to the programs that are supported by coal severance dollars?
The counties benefit from both coal severance dollars as well as local property taxes on mineral properties, and the richest counties in West Virginia in terms of revenue per capita on the property side tend to be mineral producing counties, either coal counties such as Boone County or natural gas counties such as Doddridge County and Ritchie County. So the changes in prices and activity in the mining industry has a big impact at the local level.
I know we talked one other time about how much the infrastructure program is funded from coal severance, and how those dollars were used. I know at one point in time they were primarily directed towards the Eastern Panhandle that was undergoing a lot of expansion and had a lot of infrastructure needs over there.
Yeah, we have infrastructure bonds that are supported by severance tax. Basically, the first $24 million each year goes to the program and supports a revolving loan fund and a revolving program that's well in excess of $300 million for local infrastructure development.
And I'm assuming also that the rainy day fund is funded in part at least from severance dollars.
The significant increases in severance tax collections over the last 7-8 years, along with some one-time windfalls in lottery revenues, were major contributors to the increase in the rainy day fund. 10 years ago, it was about $50 million a year fund. Now that rainy day fund A is well in excess of $500 million, and that's all due to.
What are those numbers? 50?
It was 50 about 10 years ago or so in that neighborhood, and it's now in excess of 500 million, about 500 and close to 540 million, I believe, in rainy day fund A.
What's some of the purposes or programs that money comes from the rainy day fund to support?
Well, the rainy day fund is designed mainly for rainy days or shortfalls. We have, for the most part, not tapped into it for any type of rainy day. In recent years, we've had pretty good success on the fiscal front, haven't had to go to the rainy day fund. But the rainy day fund has been tapped a few times for catastrophic floods and other types of environmental type catastrophes that occur once in a while in West Virginia, and the fund has been tapped for that purpose.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. We've had the convergence of numerous factors here over the past 18 months that have collectively accounted for some of the decreased coal production we've experienced. We've had very mild weather patterns. We have had some increased regulation on Central Appalachia coal. We've had some power plants closed here also due to federal regulation and EPA's requirements, and we're down several million tons. We have several thousand miners laid off in the state. Most experts believe that will begin to taper off and perhaps levelized right there, in the 110, 120 million ton range. I'm not sure there's a real clear assessment at what tonnage, but some do believe, most believe it'll stabilize here sometime in 2013.
About 5 years ago, we were producing 150 million tons of coal. This year, it'll be closer to 125 million tons. And I think the outlook over the next 5-6 years is for that to continue to trend down a bit. Hopefully bottom out, not too far from 100 million tons a year. One of the big factors is, as you mentioned, was a number of coal-fired power plants around the country, not only in West Virginia, but around the country, are shutting down. These tend to be older, smaller plants that were unable to financially justify the significant pollution abatement requirements that are required for electric power generation plants. And in West Virginia, we're going to lose probably about 15% of our capacity on the coal-fired side, and around the country about 8.5% over the next 4 years. And that's a pretty significant decrease in activity. Part of that generation is being picked up by natural gas. As long as natural gas prices stay low, natural gas will be the favored fuel, but the bet is that natural gas prices will bounce back up again, and then there'll be a greater level of equilibrium with coal and gas. But coal will continue to play a pretty dominant role in terms of electric power generation, just not as significant as in the past.
As in the past. Well, Mark, we're going to take a short break here, and again, want to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to join us. And your information is well received, very enlightening today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back here to resume our program today with Mr. Bill Rainey, President of the West Virginia Coal Association.
Take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see some change.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people. Connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of the Coal Scene. I'm joined here in the studio with Bill Rainey, President of the West Virginia Coal Association, and we've just been listening to Mark Muco with the State Tax and Revenue Department. Mark indicated that the tax revenues collections from severance are generally on a downward trend, and it appears there'll be a hole of about $40 million left in the state's budget next year. And prior to Mark, we had Mr. Alan Stagg, Bill, a local geologist, who talked about, and his projections were that we would likely see a decrease in coal production over the next couple of years from the state of West Virginia and Central App. And I'm glad you're able to join us here this afternoon, just looking for a reaction to both of those points that they made. One, decreased coal production, and second, decreased revenues being generated by coal.
Well, I appreciate being here, Chris, as you know, but we've talked to Alan, and certainly the numbers are indicating that we're about 7% down year to date, I think through the end of November. So the volume, the tonnage is down, and that has been somewhat predictable by Alan Stagg and some of his colleagues. And Mark Muco, of course, is about as good as they come, in the state when he begins to not only predict but report on the revenues and where they come from. And you can see that in the price erosion. And we've talked about that several months ago, that we were concerned about a decreased production as well as a decrease in price, and it was truly going to show up in the severance tax collections of the state. We're hopeful that we get some of these things straightened out. The weather begins to get severe and cold and maybe hot in the summer, and eat through some of the stockpiles. The natural gas price continues to go up. I think it's probably tripled in the last month and a half when you look at the hub price. So some of those things are beginning to happen. We got a more challenging reserve here, as you well know. So there's a lot of things that have got to happen. The economy, above all, has got to get straightened out, not only in America, but in Europe and in China and India. And that's a great market for our coal today. And they enjoy it. They like it. They want it. They're building their economies on it. And we're depending on that a great deal.
Yeah, the news focus on a lot of the undesirable events, some things that are somewhat negative. When you have people laid off and you have decreased coal production, decreased coal severance, but there's also some bright spots. I mean, it's apparent that the state's coal industry will continue well into the future to be a major driver behind the state's economy. And while we might not mine 150, 160 million tons, it appears that this is going to plateau, stabilize, and we're going to be mining 120 million tons for a long time to come if all else stays equal.
Well, we sure hope so. And if you and I got anything to do with it, we'll do everything we can to make sure that does happen. Because we've got a lot of great people that are mining coal out there. The challenges are increasing, as we said, but it's still the best workforce, the best coal miners in the world. And they can meet these challenges of geology and weather and all the other things that have a distraction as it regards the extraction and production of coal. So I think we're poised to do that, and you're seeing a diminishment of coal, I think, production everywhere across the country. with the exception of perhaps Illinois and Indiana, which were way, way down, and now they're beginning to build a little bit. So we're hopeful of taking advantage of a more scarce supply with some great, great coal that we have here. And the metallurgical market, of course, is very strong, remains strong. The price is not quite what everybody would like for it to be, but there's nevertheless a demand.
There's some things that may, you mentioned mild weather patterns, and there's certainly been a weak economy, and there's been plentiful gas.
Right.
All those things have kind of converged together. And I know you don't like to talk a lot about it, but the state of West Virginia, the coal industry here is clearly been under assault by over-regulation and some unnecessary regulation and permitting obstacles and things like that. So, but all those things collectively have resulted in this period of austerity or downward trending that we find ourselves
That's
in.
absolutely right, and I failed to mention the uncertainty is what the paralyzing point of all this regulation is. And people have some exception to the war on coal, but when you look at the lack of decisiveness that comes out of the federal government and the way that they're bullying companies and the state to accept things that are not current law or regulation, then it creates this terrible atmosphere of uncertainty. And it permeates the financial community, it permeates the industry directly with expansions and new starts. And it has been very, very dramatic. So yes, we think it is a war on coal, and there's not bullets flying, but it's almost a philosophical attack on the industry by people that we suggest that they don't think fossil fuels have a place in this world, but yet China and India continue to build their economy on it. It makes little sense to me trying to think through it logically.
Listening to Mark, again, today is we're looking at a lower number of revenues that are coming into the state coffers as a result of coal severance. It's off about 20% when you look at pricing and loss of tonnage, but it's still considerably higher, the overall collection, than what it was 3 or 4 years ago. He indicated that, we went from about 200 million to close to $500 million in about 6 or 7 years. So, we're still providing, the coal industry is still providing, just an enormous amount of taxation to the state, even in this period where we're experiencing a lower production.
I think Mark last week at the Energy Summit used the figure of 14% of the state's GDP is made up by the coal industry, the employment that's tied to it, the service and support that goes with it. And when you think about one industry doing 14% of the gross domestic product for West Virginia, that is very substantial. He didn't indicate that there would be an erosion of that, but perhaps the overall GDP reduces, but we still maintain a sizable percentage of that. We have a lot of people depend on our coal throughout the country as well as throughout the world. I think that will continue because they like the quality of it, they like the dependability of delivery. So I think we have an awful lot of things going for us here, and we just need to capitalize on it. It's a time when we need to kind of nurture the industry and encourage that new investment, renewed investment in not only expanded operations, but maybe new start. And if we get those going, because there's plenty of coal here, and we have a new mine up in Barber County, or in Taylor County, I'm sorry, and we have one up in the northern panhandle. And all of those are beginning to develop and are going to bring a lot of coal into the supply chain. And those are areas that have been dormant for quite some time. So we're seeing new energy and new activity in areas that really haven't had much coal mining, and that's very, very encouraging.
And I would hope that you would see the executive and the legislature working close with the industry to see what they might do by way of permitting policy, incentives to try to revive or slow the downward trend and do what they're able to do rejuvenate this industry.
Well, and we're certainly hopeful that that's going to happen, and the companies need to have confidence that they can make capital investments here. And we get a certainty atmosphere, if you will, with knowing that I can get a permit, I can go forward in a somewhat of an established period of time, then I think that helps everybody. But capital investment is what's going to suffer here, I'm afraid, over the next 6 to 8 months, perhaps a year. And we need to go to the state legislature and go to the executive and talk with them about ways of encouraging that.
We don't totally control our own destiny because we export a lot of our product, but we use a lot of it here within the state as well, as I understand.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess we have to also rely on other states to boost their economies and the export market to show an increase or increased demand as well.
We do. About half of the coal that is exported from America comes from West Virginia. And I'm hopeful that that's going to continue. Certainly have no reason to suspect it not to continue. Here in West Virginia, we use about 32 million tons of coal at the power plants to make electricity. About 70% of the electricity is exported to other places that need it, which is great. And all the states surrounding us have some kind of incentive for those coals that are mined in Kentucky and Ohio and Virginia and Maryland to be used in those respective states to make electricity. And we need to certainly be sure that we're using West Virginia coal to make West Virginia electricity.
Oh, the other thing that was suggested that the oil and gas and coal industry perhaps ought to formalize their relationship, so as miners are laid off in southern West Virginia, perhaps they can be encouraged to look at employment opportunities in north central and northern part of the state within the gas industry. A lot of common skill sets.
You've been very instrumental in that and making sure that that's coordinated, and the skill sets are very much the same as we're told. So those people that are laid off from the coal mines, which we hope is temporary, but nevertheless they're seeking employment, then there are opportunities in oil and gas fields, as we understand, and welders and the journeymen and those skill sets that are so industrial are certainly marketable, we're told. And I think Workforce West Virginia is trying to coordinate that. I know you're very instrumental in it.